All right, guys. Appreciate y'all attending tonight. We'll be going over Dockside Red, so I'm calling it. Talking about working docks for redfish. Going to be going over a little bit of the southeast coast area, a little bit into Florida as well. The webinar is going to last approximately 30-40 minutes, and we're going to have time at the end for questions. That'll last about 20 minutes. You can enter your questions at any time in the Q&A section. Just click on that and enter your question in, and we'll get to answering those at the end. I got a special guest tonight with me from the Charleston Angler, Captain Joe Benton, right here.
Howdy.
We're thankful for the Charleston Angler here having us live in-house tonight, giving us a great backdrop and venue to do our webinar. We are giving away a Charleston Angler logo shirt and hat giveaway. Anybody in attendance is eligible as long as you're viewing live. After the webinar is over, I will go over and randomly select someone, and I will send you an email. All you got to do is just confirm back to me and give me your address, and we'll ship it to you. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Captain Stephen Fields, professional guide and redfish tournament angler based out of Charleston, South Carolina. And our guest speaker here, Captain Joe Benton. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
I'm Captain Joe Benton. I'm a charter captain here in Charleston, South Carolina, and a product manager here at Charleston Angler.
Now that introductions are over, we'll get started. Be going over dissecting docks, setting up for success, and fishing docks effectively. Also be going over setups and rigs, rods, reels, fishing line, hooks, knots, etc. Artificial baits, live and cut baits, and then we'll get to our Q&A. And it's going to be kind of broad, so if you want something specific, just, again, click on Q&A and enter your question. We'll get more specific about it. We'll start talking off about dissecting docks, what to look for before you get to fishing them. There's definitely a lot of ground to cover, a lot of water you need to eliminate. I always go about it by looking for differences. I'll start with my charts, whether it be my Navionics iPad app or the web app or Google Earth or getting on my actual chart plotter and doing my homework. That'll kind of pinpoint where you need to start looking in real time, save you a little bit of time. As you can see down here on the mouse, the Navionics chart I have down here, I always look for docks that are going to hold water at all tides. That's going to hold fish. They're definitely not going to concentrate on docks that lose water and be stuck out in the middle of nowhere with dolphins trying to crush them. So the Navionics app or any chart plotter using my Navionics, just doing my homework, it's going to save some time for me and eliminate a lot of water, being able to see which docks are going to hold water at all tides. Again, just looking for differences. Any current break. A current break is kind of like structure for redfish, even though it's not a physical structure. Current break, eddies, anything like that is going to create a home for a fish to be able to kick back and let the bait get pushed to them. Any dock with a feeder creek, oysters, boat lift blowouts, as you can see with the electric boat lifts or the hydraulic boat lifts, anytime those are lowering boats into the water, when they crank up and back off there, it blows out a little bit of sediment from the bottom, whether it be sand, mud, whatever, and that creates a depth change and somewhere for fish to hold. Just anything any little difference that's what makes up a great dock. Again, a lot of this I can do my homework on my charts before I get out on the water. Older, more established docks tend to be better. They're going to have more growth on them, whether it be oysters or whatever else. Any depth changes, whether it's subtle or great, it doesn't matter. 6 inches to a foot can be of great impact to a redfish, especially around structure. The main reason they're hiding around these structures in the first place is to get out of the current and let the bait get brought to them. They're ambush feeders. And I'm always looking for moving water. We definitely have no problem with that up here around South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, North Florida. The Gulf Coast tends to have a little bit slower tides, so it's a little more important to definitely find an area that's going to have more moving water around it. Setting up around docks, once I go to fish them, you've got the up current, the down current sides. There's a couple different situations I'll use to kind of tell me how I'm going to set up. It's not to say I don't set up both ways on a dock no matter what, because I do, just so I can effectively fish it and make sure there's fish there or not. In situation A up here, we got an outgoing tide. The tide's moving from left to right on this dock, as you can see. It's a little bit slower moving tide right here. It's kind of tucked back in a cut. On docks like this, I'm going to set up on the up current side first and just let my baits drift into the dock and under the dock. The fish are usually sitting tighter up under the dock itself in those situations. Again, sometimes they're not. This is just a most of the time scenario. In situation B here, again, we got an outgoing tide. We've also got this creek that's flowing out to us, creating a lot of heavy current on this dock. The fish are going to tend to kick back and sit on the down current side of this dock to get more of a current break from it. I'll sit up down current of this dock. I'm going to stay off of it a good bit just so I don't spook the fish. It's not going to be the deepest water out there. They're still going to be shallow. A lot of times you can still see these fish, especially when they're actively feeding. And I'll actually skip or flip up under these docks and work it back to them. Definitely don't want to cast on top of these fish to avoid spooking them. You can also cast up under there with live or cut bait and let it soak as well, and they'll find it out. A little bit stealthier on that setup. Captain Joe Benton, just a different perspective on how he fishes docks.
I really like to fish on like on A. I'll fish a lot more live bait on that up current side coming down to the dock. And B, it can be a little sketchy to fish on the up current side of that dock sometimes with artificials and a trolling motor. You just kind of got to be careful. But I really prefer coming in from the bottom and skipping up under the docks with soft plastics.
Yeah, and another point I want to bring up, if you don't have one, try to get one, a shallow water anchor, whether it be Talon or power pole. It's really key when I'm fishing docks to be able to just a press of the button and I'm anchored down. Allows me to more effectively fish these docks in these situations. A lot of times on docks, man, you can get hung up dropping an actual anchor, making noise, or drifting into the dock when it lets go. Shallow water anchor is definitely a tool of the trade in these situations. Get down into fishing docks effectively, how I go about actually fishing these docks and picking them apart to make sure they have fish, or if they don't, definitely eliminating water. Until I find a dock that has a lot of fish, this is if I'm in searching mode, which I am in a lot of tournament situations, just trying to find a bite. I wouldn't go and soak bait until I actually find out there are fish there for certain. So I'm going to eliminate a lot of water. I go about it by power fishing a lot of times, using artificials, just to be able to pick every little nook and cranny from the shallowest part of the dock to a deep hole at the end of the dock if it's holding one, or little sand potholes throughout the live vegetation under the water. That's more of a Gulf Coast Florida type thing, or East Coast of Florida as well. And I'll be, flipping, skipping, pitching, running spinner baits, just picking the dock completely apart. Definitely, get down and dirty in these situations, as it says. Don't be afraid to lose baits to win, because it takes it. A lot of these docks are holding some pretty hazardous structure, whether it be oysters, rebar, rocks, who knows what's down there, what people throw off that's holding these fish. There's a lot of different current breaks around these docks a lot of times. But a lot of situations, I mean, if I'm not feeling the structure, I'm not getting the bites. I want to touch it. I want to bounce off of it. I want to get hung and then get it unhung. A lot of times they'll hit it as soon as you get it unstuck from something. Definitely want to be tight to the structure. Mix up your tactics. Don't try one thing. Use multiple things. Like I said, power fishing, spinner baits, flipping soft plastics, and jigs. And if a dock is holding fish, I know it's holding fish. I can, in a charter situation, I'll definitely be soaking some live or cut bait to get more bites. Floating popping corks around the dock pilings with live bait like shrimp or mud minnows. That's a great tactic as well. You can let that cork work every opening and piling of that dock. You can just keep moving it away from the pilings when the tide's taking it in, let it drift in the other one and in and out and so on. That's another great tool to use. Joe, you got anything to add?
Once you do find some of these docks that are holding fish, don't tell your buddies, because a lot of times the docks that do hold fish they'll keep holding fish.
That's right. That's actually a good, important tip. Do not tell your friends. And do better than I am. I mean, I'm sure there's some Charleston folks that are licking their chops at some of these pictures right now. Rod and reel setups. It's pretty basic. You can give or take on these. This is just broad. It's not to say you can't use a 3,000 reel or beef it up to a 6,000 if you want to. Depends what kind of redfish are holding around your dock. But this is just my take on it. 4,000, 5,000 series spinning reels. You definitely get the higher end ball bearings. Make sure it's a pretty high end gear ratio as well. You need to pick up that line quick around a lot of these docks. 7 foot, 7'6" medium heavy action spinning rods. That's pretty much the average rod I'll use in these situations, whether it be tournament fishing or for guiding. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean I don't beef it up to a heavy action every now and then. Use around 20 to 30 pound braided fishing line. You got to love braid. It's just more abrasion resistant. It won't break quite as easily when rubbing against these structures. And I use equal or greater to 30-pound fluorocarbon leader material in most of these situations. You can beef it up to 50 if you wanted to, if you were using a little heavier fishing line. Some of the rigs I use, we're getting into tackle here. When I'm flipping artificials, soft plastics, I love using the Texas rig with a flipping hook. I use the VMC flipping hook. I use the snail knot to tie the braid directly to the flipping hook with a bullet weight above. What happens when you set the hook on this rig is the hook will actually do what it's showing in the picture. That's the top left one. The hook will actually kick up when you're putting tension on it, and the sinker sits down on top. That'll increase your hookup ratio greatly, instantly, and it'll allow you to put pressure on the fish and get him out of the structure as quickly as possible, which is pretty key when you're fishing around some of these hazardous structural areas with, again, oysters, rebar, everything that they can try to break you off on. A jig head is another one I'll use. That's pretty much the end-all, be-all for most people is the jig head. You can do anything with it. It's not weedless, though. So when I'm in a situation where I'm needing to be weedless, I'll use the weighted swim bait hook a lot of times, or the Texas rig with flipping hook, just so I can get tighter to structure and not worry about having to get hung up, and I can effectively fish it better. Down here at the bottom is the Carolina rig with circle hook. That's definitely my go-to charter rig for fishing around these docks. It's pretty much an egg sinker to a barrel swivel, 1 foot, 2 foot of leader material, just depends the depth I'm fishing, down to the circle hook. That's going to allow this bait to kind of float up from the bottom freely, as well as the popping cork over here. I'm just going to tie, again, it depends on the depth of water you're fishing, 2, 3 foot, 4 foot leader, to that with a jig head below it. Or sometimes I'll tie a weightless circle hook on it as well, let it free swim around if it's a live menhaden or shrimp or something like that. I'll be kind of broad about the knots here. You can visit netknots.com. They'll be more in depth. They got some videos for you. Fluorocarbon leader. to braided line, I'm using the uni knot. That's just my preference. There's a bunch of great knots out there that work. It's just one I've always used, and it's just I haven't had any problems with it. So it's a mental thing. I don't want to change. It's a great one. The improved clinch knot, that's general use knot right there. It's one of the more popular, easy ones to tie. Again, that's just one I grew up, that my dad taught me, and
Yeah,
I haven't kind of swayed from it. I use it a lot of times. It's a great knot to tie to any hook or setup. The non-slip loop knot, I'm using that a lot of times on jig heads, swim bait hooks, pending. You want to make sure the swim bait or any style of bass hook, you want to make sure that eye that you're tying it to is closed. Loop knot can come out of the section that's not fully touching. You just want to make sure, that whatever you're tying it to, eyelet is fully enclosed and it won't slip out. But great knot. I'm using that, like I said, on all my jig heads, a lot of my swim bait hooks. Definitely hard plastics, crankbaits, twitch baits, top water baits. The knot I use for my Texas rig bait with the VMC flipping hook is the snail knot. And I use the uni knot version of this. Again, a great knot. All the tension is on the hook itself. There's not one spot on the knot on top of the eyelet that could break. It's just a great down and dirty knot to use. It pairs up well with the bullet weight, how it flips the hook up. A lot of the bass guys use this when they're fishing heavy vegetation or lily pads, flipping for those bed and bass. It's just tried and true. A lot of the baits I like to use, as far as soft plastic go, the Z-Man trout trick has become a favorite of mine over the past couple of years. It's kind of a do-all bait, mimics everything except a crab. But, it mimics bait fish, bloodworm, whatever, sand eel. It's a great, useful bait. I rig it with a jig head or a weighted swim bait hook, Texas rig for flipping it. It's a do-all. It's always on. As far as colors go, dirty water I'm using more for early in the morning, late in the evening. More opaque baits where the light's going to reflect off of it. That way I have a little bit of a darker silhouette to it for the fish. So this is one of my favorite colors, is the root beer chartreuse tail. The shrimps by Z-Man, great scent and soft plastic. They use Procure scent, one of the best scents out there. The shrimp has a lot of action to it with the Z-Man Elastec that they make their baits with. It gives it a little bit of a flotation. So it's, you can do anything from keep it on the bottom with a jig head, or work it with a Carolina rig, or work it with the Texas rig, and the bait will kind of float up, kind of like, they're perfect for shaky heads. You can use those in redfish situations as well. I rig it with anything from a jig head, Texas rig, or works great as a trailer on a popping cork as well. Very lifelike. It'll outfish live shrimp most of the time. Z-Man crabs, which are also scented with Procure bait scent. This is crab season down here. We got the soft shell crabs, so the redfish are on a big crab bite right now. So I'm throwing a lot of these crab artificials when I'm fishing artificials. I'll rig it with a jig head or with a small weighted swim bait hook, 2/0, 3/0, usually 1/8 ounce. I kind of rig it a little sideways on it so the crab's still sitting like a natural crab and not falling over. And also the paddlers, great swim bait. I can do anything from baby this thing to power fish with it. It's just got a lot of action. It can get an aggressive bite when fish aren't aggressive. I rig it with a jig head or a weighted swim bait hook for weedless situations, something I can really work the docks with effectively and quick, and eliminate some water. Z-Man came out with the skimmers jig and the flats jig as well. There's silicone skirts on these. You got the weedless design up top for the skimmers jig, and the non-weedless design for the flats jig on the bottom. Both are great. Again, I'm just using one or the other depending on if I need to be weedless or not. I like the 1/4 ounce 3/0 black nickel hook version. A lot of times I will put the Z-Man curly tails or a smaller Z-Man swim bait as a trailer on these. It's a great bait to flip and pitch, as well as sight fish. A lot of these fish, especially in the grass or sand potholes around South Florida. The flats jig at the bottom, again, it's not as weedless, but there are other things I do with this jig other than just flipping or pitching. I'll rig it up for a spinnerbait a lot of times, or just put a trailer on it. Again, the Curly Tails trailer by Z-Man. Or also just rig it on the bottom of a popping cork. Really great action to it. Kind of mimics a shrimp or a little squid. Spinner baits, this is when I get down and dirty on docks, and really I'm needing to search a lot of water. If I got 20 or so docks or 10 docks, I really need to pick through and see what's going on in those areas. Spinner bait's a great, effective way to power fish those docks, see what's going on. I kind of like my own personal setup of spinner baits best. Again, it's a mental game. I like getting the H&H Redfish spinner, number 4 size, gold Colorado blade. I'll put a Z-Man Trout Eye jig head on there, which has the 2-aught Mustad black nickel hook, usually the 3/16 ounce version. In certain situations, I'll also use the Aqua Dream 1/8 ounce swim jig with the hitchhiker for weedless situations where I'm not looking to get hung up every time. I just think the way I have my setup, it's a smaller profile. It's less aggressive. I think the fish have a lot easier time actually just getting the whole bait instead of getting after one large spoon or spinner blade that's on there. Again, just a mental thing, just a little tip trick might help you out. We go. We got some baits here that Joe Benton uses. He's uses a lot of D.O.A's, great bait. He's got a lot more to tell you about that.
Yeah, I rig a lot of these. This 3-inch C.A.L with usually an 1/8 ounce or a 1/4 ounce jig. I'll go outside of that a little bit. Sometimes I'll do a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter, but most of the time it's you can get away with an 1/8 or 1/4 ounce. Deeper water, faster moving water, I'm going to use the 1/4 ounce, obviously. If the dock has a lot of oysters or grass, I'll rig it with a flutter hook, usually an 1/8 ounce 3/0 flutter hook. And one of my favorites, the D.O.A shrimp. I like to fish the 3-inch 1/4 ounce shrimp in slower moving water. And I'll fish the 4-inch 1/2 ounce and faster, deeper moving water. The 1/2 ounce is a little easier to cast. A lot of times I like to fish these naked. But on charters I'll use a popping cork a lot. If you really want to get down with it, if you want to get down to the bottom, I will re-rig and take the shrimp and put a jig head in there to really sink it real fast. And lately I've been fishing the 2.75-inch shrimp, which this model has a keel weighted hook to keep the bait upright in fast or slow moving water. This bait, I'm really liking it. It's going to be a game changer, I believe. And I also use the C.A.L jerk baits with a 1/4 or 1/8 inch flutter hook, or a jig head of the same size a lot of times. And majority of the time I like to use the 4-inch jerk bait. If the water's real dirty, stained, I go to the 5.5 inch jerk bait.
All right, enough about artificials. We'll get into some cut bait and live bait here that we'll use, which is very deadly around docks, especially if it's one of your go-to docks that you know that's holding fish. It's definitely going to pick up the bites. This time of year through a lot of the summer, I don't care. I got blue crab on the boat. It's dangerous when it comes to the reds.
Redfish candy.
That's right, redfish filet mignon. Half blue crab, 1/4 blue crab, depends on how big it is, but I'll pop the top shell off, unlike the picture down there, I will actually trim the legs off. They kind of just get in my way. But I will leave the joints. I'll cut it in half or quarter it up, depending on, again, how big the crab is. I'll actually hook the hook through the back fin joint. The picture does not have that. That gives you a general idea, but that's what I do. I'll rig it through the back fin joint. It's going to hold in there very well. I'll usually rig this bait on a Carolina rig using a 2/0 circle hook or live bait hook with a 30-pound fluorocarbon leader to a barrel swivel, and then above that I'll have a 1/4 or 1/2 ounce egg sinker. I'm sure depending on what situation you're fishing, you can beef this up a little bit, especially with your weights. You might need a 1 ounce weight egg sinker to get down and dirty. But it allows this crab to kind of float up and flutter around, but still stay in the same spot. Again, it's just deadly around docks. I wouldn't waste too much time, especially fishing a spot with this bait. If it's got fish, put it down there. If you don't have a bite in a minute or two, pitch it somewhere else or go to another dock. It's just that deadly. As we get into the warmer months here, everything's warming up. You got mullet that are everywhere. Cut mullets, pretty good ticket, or live mullet, as long as it's finger mullet. I usually rig this on a Carolina rig as well. Again, the 2/0 circle hook or live bait hook. 30-pound fluorocarbon leader to a barrel swivel, and then the 1/4 ounce or 1/2 ounce egg sinkers. As far as live baits go, live shrimps, the ticket when it warms up. If you ain't got it, sometimes it can be a tough day. Better have it. Carolina rig, that's obviously one of my favorite rigs to use on charters. I use a smaller 1/0, 2/0 circle hook, live bait hook with these, with a 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce egg sinker. And again, the 30-pound fluorocarbon leader to the barrel swivel. You can also work these on jig heads. You can let it sit, or you can actually work this like an artificial as well. Use an 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce, or a 1/2 ounce jig head, depending on the depth of the water or the current conditions there. Also great is a popping cork rig with the fluorocarbon leader, 2, 3, 4 foot, depending on the depth of water you're fishing. I'll hang it on there with either a live bait circle hook or just a regular live bait J hook or a jig head to get it weighted down. Great to dissect docks. You can float that cork anywhere and keep it out of trouble. Also, Menhaden, as it warms up, we're going to have these bad boys everywhere. Again, I'll use this on a Carolina rig. It's pretty much the same setup as hook size and fluorocarbon leader and all that. You can also use it as cut bait if that's your only option, kind of as you do the mullet. But live Menhaden is the trick. Jay, you got anything as far as live bait you want to mention?
You got to have it in summer. That's the main thing. At least around South Carolina in this area, it's mandatory in the summer. It can be a long, hard day if you don't have any live bait.
Amen to that. Thank goodness most of our tournaments are in the spring, late summer, fall. It can get tough, man. We appreciate y'all attending. I hope it was informative. Again, I know it was broad. If you got any questions, definitely type them in the Q&A and we'll answer them here shortly. Also, my email address, you should have it in the invitation, or it'll be on the screen at the end. Feel free to send me any of your questions. I'll definitely be more than happy to answer them. Yeah, I appreciate the Charleston Angler having us and hosting us here. It's a great backdrop, great venue to be at, to be doing a webinar. It's been fun. They definitely one of the best tackle shops on the East Coast, if not the best. You can also find them online at thecharlestonangler.com, zmanfishing.com, and aquadreamliving.com. Love those baits, love those guys. I appreciate their support. And Jeff Benton here, your D.O.A. lures guy. Definitely a great bait, huge following in the Florida, South Carolina, Georgia area, as well as on the Gulf Coast. Definitely check them out at doalures.com. Again, thank you for attending. And there's some info right there. Feel free to visit my charter website at charlestonfishingcompany.com, as well as fieldsfishing.com. There's a lot of great updates on there, a lot of tips and tricks videos on both of those sites. The Fields Fishing site is more geared towards the tournament side of things. You can keep up with what I'm doing, what area I'm in. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Definitely follow me on those. To find out more about any upcoming webinars through Navionics, just go to navionics.com and join the mailing list, and definitely be sure to register for any future webinars. They got some great stuff out there. I'm not just doing them, I'm attending some of these. A lot of great information throughout the country from different guys with different skill sets. It's just an awesome thing. Definitely take advantage of it. It's free. Everybody loves free. All right, we'll get into some questions here. All right, David May. All right, well, we'll get to you. We got a lot of questions. All right, David May. Thanks, guys, for your info. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it, David. Michael Metz, what tide stage is best for dock fishing? I prefer low tide or lower tide, whether it be mid outgoing, low incoming. I definitely want a lower tide on the East Coast where we're at here, as far as North Florida to South Carolina. Not that I don't get them at high tide. I have quite a few docks where there's a lot of Spartina grass on the edges, the grass line around the dock, and these fish will actually be right in the corner where the grass meets the dock, hanging out up in the grass. And it's a great sight fishing situation there. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it, Lee. Do you like to drift fish to cover a wider area? If so, what is your technique? Steve Sharon. We appreciate the question, Steve. I don't do a lot of drift fishing around these docks. It just, in our area anyways, it depends where you're at. If it's a real low tide and it's just the end of the docks out there and you just wanted to fish the ends and you have a whole line of docks, and it's a slower tide and you got a trolling motor, yeah. I would just be not using a lot of live bait, but I'd be definitely pitching some power fishing lures out there, spinner baits, some jigs. Flipping and pitching would be a huge thing if I'm drifting. I guess as far as drifting goes, it's kind of what I do, except I'm using the trolling motor going in and around the docks, hitting them from every angle. Any little nook and cranny, I'm flipping and pitching and running some spinner baits to find these fish. Hope I answered your question. If you need some more info or want to submit it to me again, just send me an email. Jason, what water depth are you keying in on for the docks you fish? It all depends. As long as it's got water, redfish will be there. They can be as shallow as they want, and for the most part they are. So it just depends what spot I have. I always want deep water access, whether it be on the end of the dock or what. If there's 6 inches to a foot of water where the water's going up onto the bank at a lower tide, but the end of dock has 4 foot of water, I'm going to fish all depths. Some days it's always different. And the dog days of summer at low tide, I will find them at the end of the dock. Those depths vary at low tide. Some docks it'll be 2 foot. That's the deep hole for that dock, and those fish treat it like it's a 50-foot hole. They don't care. Or 10 foot. Definitely, you just want to key in on docks that do have the deeper water access at the very end of the dock. But anywhere else there's water on that dock, they can be sitting. If you pull up to a row of docks with the trolling motor, how long? I didn't get that full question there, but if you're asking how long do I stay, I'm going to work the dock until I'm displeased with it or I'm very happy with it. I'm definitely going to pick it apart to the best of my ability before I leave. David May, do any dock investigating with side scan sonar before you start? Definitely. Those are more of the deeper docks at the end for sure, that are at least 4 foot to 10 foot of water, deep holes at the end of the docks. That way the sonar and downscan and side scan will be of greater use. I can pick up on these things. It's a great tool to use. You can just barely be off the dock there, and you're picking up a lot of these. I actually use it on charters a lot as well. There's some areas around Charleston where there's a long line of docks, and actually all the docks are pretty good. They're holding black drum or redfish or sheep's head. And I'll kind of just, work down the outside of the dock, seeing what I'm picking up, seeing where they might be staging that day. Good question. Great tool. Adam, with popping corks, are you working them or just letting them float around? Also, how long of a leader from the cork to the hook? When fishing with live menhaden, where do you hook them? All right. You want to take this question, Joe? I hate to keep you out here.
Well, a lot of times I'll just float them through there and kind of work them back a lot of times. Don't make a real long cast with them. Just let them drift through the dock and then work them back under. That's how I do it a lot. Sometimes I just let them sit there. Just depends, really. But as far as hooking the menhaden, I hook them up through the nose, right through the nose, or up under the chin, and just go through the chin, not through the whole mouth.
That's right. It's pretty much the same way I do it. I'm definitely going to let the corks drift into the dock because the lower tides around here that we're fishing the docks, you don't want to spook the fish. You want a gentle presentation, but you can work that cork, popping it, every so many seconds on the way back. As far as popping the cork, my general rule of thumb, and this is just me, some people do it different, I'll pop it once or two quick pops, and I'll wait until the rings from those pops disappear, and then I'll pop it again.
And a lot of times I'll drift them through for a while and not really aggressively work them real hard until probably right before I feel like it's time to go. When I get a little frustrated, I'll start popping them a little more. Sometimes it'll initiate a strike.
All right, Jason, what part of the dock are you fishing, and how long do you fish a dock before you move with both artificial and live bait? Again, any part of the dock that holds water. Again, I'm targeting docks that are going to be holding water at all parts of the tide, especially low tide. That's when I'm keying in on these docks as low income and high or mid outgoing, somewhere in there. Let's see. So I'm targeting all. I'm usually going to start in shallower water. Redfish, again, they know what's going on. If they're active, you're going to see them being active. So I'll kind of start there with kind of line of sight deal, and then I'll work deeper, definitely being as stealthy as possible, be flipping the docks all the way out to the end. Definitely at low tide, that's when you're definitely going to find most of the fish kind of holding up in the little hole at the end of these docks.
Seems like a lot of people want to know how long to stay at a dock. I really go with gut feeling. If I feel good about it, I'll stick around for a while and keep fishing. Sometimes you just get that bad feeling. It's time to go. Move on to the next one.
That's right. It's a mental thing. If you're not feeling it, you can't effectively fish anyways. Confidence goes a long way.
You might go 5 docks and not get anything and feel like you should have stayed at the first one.
It's all about eliminating water. You definitely want to key in on all the docks that hold all these key features. Not every single one of them is going to have fish. I can promise you that, but you will find them, and you can learn from that experience. Why is this dock holding more fish than the other docks that look good? And you can learn from those situations and add that to future knowledge.
Follow the golden rule: don't leave fish to find fish.
Yeah, I've done that before. It's not a good idea. If you see me on the lower end of finishing in a tournament, that's usually what we did. That was a terrible idea. Thanks for your time. Great seminar. Appreciate that, Michael. Doesn't matter what the bottom is like, pluff mud versus hard sand. Not really. As long as, closer to our inlets, you're going to get the more hard sandy areas, and more inland up the rivers and the marshes and stuff. It's going to be more pluff mud in our area. It doesn't really matter as long as these docks have something different about them, some structure, current breaks to them. The actual bottom doesn't matter. Jason, any tips for getting jigs unhung from a snag when you get one? Yeah, I have I call it the bow and arrow technique. I don't know
guitar method.
Yeah, the guitar method. I'll pull on the braided line with my free reeling hand, and I'll actually, when it has a lot of tension and bend in the rod, I'll let it go and pop it. It kind of shoots a little bit of line and vibration back toward the lure. It's a 50-50 thing. It really does work.
It works a lot.
I mean, it's pretty great method. I might need to do a little video on that or something. We won't be able to get one unhung when we do a video. You didn't mention mud minnows. No, I did not. I appreciate you asking that. It's hard to remember everything. I can only fit so many pictures on this presentation. Do you recommend not using them over other live baits in the Charleston area? Not necessarily. Mud minnows are the bait you can always pick up. They're always available.
They're always at the shop.
They're great. I mean, mud minnows work very well year round in Charleston, but there are certain times where you got to have that live shrimp or that blue crab or that cut mullet. It's kind of just depends on what the bite's doing that time of year. I do know when it gets warmer, the smaller mud minnows just don't cut it because you got a lot of finger mullet swimming around. But if I can get those larger mud minnows, they'll work just as well as the live finger mullet. I'll work that live mud minnow on a Carolina rig or under a popping cork. Great bait to use. I have them on my boat like 75% of the time.
It's good to have a variety of live baits. Sometimes they won't eat mud minnows. Sometimes it's just shrimp. Sometimes it's just finger mullet. But it's good to have a variety so you can at least narrow it down and figure out what they do want.
All right, Jason, do you ever use pinfish? If so, how do you rig? Yeah, we'll use smaller pinfish in the area that we're in here, Charleston, South Carolina, Georgia, North Florida. Just smaller pinfish, the bite size that these redfish are targeting in on. You can rig them a variety of ways. You can rig them back behind the back tail and trim the tail off a little bit so it really gets frustrated and goes chaotic. You can rig bottom to the top through the lips, right above on top of their head.
Mm-hmm.
All those rigs work very well. And it does matter how you rig them sometimes on what reaction the fish are going to have to them. So I kind of mix it up. And yeah, that was a great question. I know the Florida guys and the Gulf Coast guys, that's a key thing down there is using pinfish, because a lot of times, even up here when we're fishing either artificial bait or even live bait of a different sort, the pinfish will come up and peck at it, and that actually attracts a lot of predators, including redfish. They'll eat the pinfish and your bait. They don't care. So I'm glad you guys are asking great questions. A few things slipped my mind. Y'all are definitely completing this webinar. We appreciate that. Billy, when using artificial, are you bouncing on the bottom or staying in the water column? I'm doing both for sure. I definitely want to cover all levels of the water column. Just kind of see what the fish are doing. And you can usually do that with all baits, working it. Jig head, I'm popping it up and down. That's going to kind of work all the water columns that I'm fishing, or I'm going to drag it across the bottom. Swim bait hook, that's going to be more of a top to mid water column bait with a jerk shad or a paddler's. And the Texas rig, again, that's more of a bottom rig. I'm flipping it and just popping it off the bottom, bringing it back to me, working a lot of different areas. And the spinner bait, you can kind of work all depths of the water column with that thing. I can crawl it across the bottom and it'll look like a crab. Or I can definitely power fish that thing and burn it through all the different, levels that I want to. The good thing with a spinner bait is throughout your retrieve, you can slow down and work it deeper, speed it up. You can do a lot of things in one retrieve with a spinner bait, and it'll let you know what's going on. Michael, how far off the dock is too far? Do you have to get the bait under the dock, live and artificial?
I'm gonna say yes. It's you need to get the bait under, because a lot of times, like in one of the earlier slides we had on I don't know if y'all remember, but on that B, when that current's coming back through, you want your bait to go on through and be able to drop down and be coming on the bottom or somewhere close to the bottom when it's coming back through where the fish are. So yeah, I like to get underneath. That's kind of one of those personal things. I do like to get under the dock and come back through.
Yeah, you need to be down and dirty, definitely getting in and around that structure, in and out of it. That's where these guys are going to be sitting,
And that skip cast is you need to have that at some point.
Yeah, skipping, flipping, you can go about like you're bass fishing these things. It's kind of like us, that dock is their recliner. If I'm sitting in the recliner and, my wife throws a potato chip 5 feet to the right of the recliner, that's not cutting it, I mean, but if it lands in my lap while I'm sitting in my recliner, I'm good. I'm taking care of it.
I'm going to eat it even if you're not hungry.
That's right. When anchoring up current from the dock, how far away do you anchor? Depends how heavy the current is. For one thing, you definitely want to keep your distance so you don't get slung up into the dock. But I'm going to stay, I'll even go as far as, 20 yards off of it. A lot of these docks have shallower water and the fish are sitting in it. I definitely don't want to make them aware that I'm there. So, within casting range, whatever your casting range is, I'm not going to get right up on these docks unless I have to. And yes, there's certain situations, especially on some of the deeper docks that hold that deeper water in the holes around the end of the dock, that I'm going to get up and get down and dirty, flipping and pitching around it in those situations. When working a jig, how far off the bottom do you pop it, or how do you work it back from under the dock? Jig.
I do a couple. I usually work my soft plastics painfully slow back, and I'll do a pretty aggressive pop, but I'm only taking in a little, just enough to take that slack out of the line from when I popped it. So a lot of times I'm working it really slow, and once I get out of the zone there, I'm a lot of times reeling it back in real quick and getting it right back in the zone. I don't like messing around with water that doesn't have fish. So I'm going to try to keep it in that zone for as long as possible. And once I'm out of it, I'm bringing it in and firing it right back in there.
That's a good point. I definitely want to keep my cast in the strike zone for as long as possible. So I'm looking to make great cast where the retrieve is going to be in the strike zone for the longest amount of time. All right, we got a little bit of time here left. See if any more questions pop up from you guys. Again, we greatly appreciate the great questions and feedback that y'all are giving us. I greatly appreciate it. All right, well, if that's all the questions for now, nope, got another one. All right, back in the game. How do you rig your live shrimp? All kind of different ways. I'll put mine out there, and I'm sure Joe's got a few different ways he'll rig his. With circle hook, I can do anything from going in through the tail and coming out the back, or I'll rig it underneath the horn, being careful not to hit the brain of the shrimp. I'll also, with a jig head, a lot of times on a live shrimp, I'll actually pop that tail off and run that jig head down through the back end of the shrimp. Gives it definitely a artificial look to it, and I can really work it. It stays on there very well.
I like the horn. That's what I do most of the time. Usually pop and cork, I do the horn. jig head kind of thing, or a regular circle hook or something, I'll kind of weave it through on the bottom up through its tail. But I'd rather be on a popping cork and put it through the horn.
Yeah, that's the general way to rig it, and it works. They stay on there fine. All right, Mike May, do you fish with spoons? Another question I knew would come up. Wasn't able to fit that in. If so, what kind, color, and weight? I definitely prefer, trust, and rely on Aqua Dream Living spoons. Mike Hockala does a great job on these. They hold up very well. They use those black nickel hooks. Some of the greatest presentations for a spoon out there. I can work this thing, whether it's crawling it across the bottom like a crab, using it as a swim bait, a jerk bait. You work it fast enough, it's kind of a subsurface to top water bait. It's a great do-all bait. If there is only one bait in the world that I could have, if I was stuck on an island and that's the only thing I could have to survive, I would choose a spoon. Of course, you know, the traditional gold and copper spoons work well. Aqua Dream came out with the new black to chartreuse color spoon. The thing's awesome. It's the real deal. Definitely check out Aqua Dream's website, aquadreamliving.com, and check out their products. Great product. What is the best time of year to fish docks?
Just about all year round. Docks. The thing about the docks is, like Steven said earlier, that's kind of where they're going to relax. That's where they feel more comfortable. When you get that low tide, they don't have very many places to go, but either get more shallow or hide in the structure. So a lot of times, I mean, dead of winter can be pretty tough unless you do have a good school of fish hanging around the docks. But it's pretty good all year round.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree that, you know, in the cooler months here, when our reds really get tighter on the flats, there's definitely a bigger concentration of reds around the docks. But, you know, the summertime offers plenty of opportunity for those big reds to be out there, especially with all the fresh bait we got flowing through. David May, do you use a swivel with spoons? Yes. Forgot to add that too. I'll use a barrel swivel. I like the Spro barrel swivel for my artificial bait, especially the spoons. That's just going to allow the spoon to work more freely and to prevent any sort of twist or hang-ups. You know, you get a lot of twist in your lines that can affect the strength of your leader or fishing line. So the swivel is just going to give the spoon more free action without worrying about any twist or anything like that. Zachary Smith asked, what water temps are you looking for, or does it matter? Again, it's kind of an all year long thing. I don't just fish docks, but, you know, I'm always looking at docks. I love structure like that. It's always going to hold fish. They can react differently. You know, the hotter the water temp gets, the slower they're going to be. They're definitely going to be targeting more of those deeper holes on the docks, looking for the most current break they can get, so they don't have to expend a lot of energy. But yeah, that's about it on the water temps. Is there anything different that you do fishing docks on the South Esto?
I don't fish down there.
We don't fish down there, man. We got some local people on here. Water is a lot dirtier there. Yeah, the fishing on the South Edisto is terrible. It's awful. No, actually, the South Edisto, that's definitely an area where you're going to want to key in on docks. I love those types of situations. There's a lot of deeper water, a lot of faster moving current there. Water's definitely stirred up a little bit, dirtier water. I'd say a lot of those docks are going to hold water at all tides down there. And docks are just a key structure for them to down there. Is they don't have as many flats or areas that other sorts of structure they'll sit on. So a lot of these fish will be sitting around these docks that gives them an opportunity to get out of the current a little bit and let the bait get pushed to them. It's still the same scenario. Anything different about the docks is the ones I'm going to try try first to eliminate some water.
And with that dirty water, I fish bigger baits.
Yep.
Bigger
profiles.
baits, more that vibrate a lot. Stuff like that, bigger paddle tails, stuff like that. And a lot of times, we'll move it pretty fast in there to get that vibration. Darker colors, darker, sparkly with a touch of chartreuse.
There you go. Definitely more opaque colors, solid colors. Gives it a better silhouette. Live baits or cut baits can be key in these situations a lot. You might have to spend a little bit more time dissecting a lot of these docks that you found that look good, just to see if you can get the bite with these. But a lot of times also you can bust out the crankbaits, man. I love my crankbaits, my rattle traps, spoons, spinner baits, get down and dirty and power fish these docks. Gives it a lot of vibration, bigger profiles. See if you can get a reaction strike out of those fish. But there's plenty of redfish to be had on docks in the South Edisto, I promise you. Michael, do you ever use gulp crab on a popping or Carolina rig? No, just email. I'm just joking. Nah, gulp's very effective bait, man. When it's tough conditions and nothing else will work, gulp will.
And you can dead stick it.
Yeah, you can fish that thing like little cut bait. It's crazy how well that stuff works. Gulp crab. I don't do much on a popping cork. I know it works, especially with little pass crabs and stuff, or little fiddler crabs. It's a great tool to have because a lot of these little fiddler crabs can hang on to little dock pilings and be floating through. The sheep's head love them. Or on a Carolina rig. Yes, I've used gulp crab and a lot of other crabs on the Carolina rig as artificials, especially our redfish tournament trail is all artificial. If it's a little more finicky or something, especially this time of year when they're feeding heavily on crabs, that's actually one of the rigs I will use a lot of the times is the Carolina rig with the artificial crab. Mike, great session. Will we be able to download? Yes, this is all being recorded live, and it will be submitted to Navionics, and they should have it up on the website soon. I'm not 100% sure if you can download, but if you can't download it, you can view it to your heart's content on there. A lot of other great videos that have been recorded that they keep on in that library as well. Can you identify good docks from maps like Google Earth? If so, what should you look for?
Navionics app.
Yeah, there you go. You can kind of use all your tools at your disposal. I wouldn't be limited to one map, or anything like that. I'm going to use everything I got. From my Navionics charts, especially my Navionics app. I love my contour lines. You're definitely going to be able to see what's going to hold water at certain tides and what's not. There's actually a great tool under the map options on the Navionics app where you can actually adjust the water level. If it's going to be a negative low tide, you can actually take it down to a negative few feet or so, or a flood tide. You can move that level up there, and it'll show the charts what it'd look like if there was a flood tide. Really neat tool. But I'm kind of using it all, man. Google Earth or the satellite imaging on my Navionics Platinum Plus charts is going to show low tide everywhere. It's going to show you the exposed oysters. So it's great for that, finding your oysters or what other structure might be under the water at a higher tide. But I'll definitely pair that and go back and look at my contours, especially on my sonar charts, which is going to be the 1 foot high definition contour lines. Definitely see where those tighter contours, which is going to be the most severe drop, are moving through. That's going to be a fish highway. So, just use everything at your disposal. Great information, fellas. First webinar ever. You did not disappoint. I appreciate it. Glad to hear that. That's going to keep me coming back. Definitely check out like I said, the rest of the Navionics webinars, and I have a webinar coming up in May called Cobia Crazy. It's going to be a good time. Going to be down there in Florida to do that one live and get some cobia fishing in the day before down there. Going to be good times. Again, about out of time here. I appreciate everyone attending. If you got any more questions, just shoot me an email. send me a message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever social media thing I have out there. I appreciate Captain Joe Benton joining with me tonight and then putting his input in. Definitely a wealth of knowledge there. I'm sure he'll be back for a few more of my webinars for sure. And again, appreciate the Charleston Angler having us here. It's a great backdrop.
Yeah, if you are ever in Charleston, come in and see us. If you live in Charleston, still come in and see us.
Great. All right, guys, we appreciate it. Take care.
All right.